Hello YouTube, Chow434 here. I thought I'd take the time today to make a video about my military helmet collection, as well as discuss some topics that I feel are very important in the field of Militaria collecting in general. Now, let me preface this by saying that I've been collecting Militaria for a couple of years now. I have a decent-sized collection that I'm very happy with, and to say the least, I've put quite a bit of money into it. And that's one of the things about military collecting in general, is that you have to spend a lot of money. Now, a lot of people collect stamps or coins or baseball cards, and those are relatively cheap if you're not too serious about it. You can probably get a pack of baseball cards for a couple of dollars, although that might have changed now, I don't know. But in terms of Militaria, you're talking prices that go up anywhere from the hundreds of dollars to the thousands to the tens of thousands of dollars just for one piece of equipment or a helmet or even just a medal. So you're talking about a hobby that is very, very expensive and very hard to get into unless you have the financial means to do so. It's why a lot of Militaria collectors are elderly gentlemen or people with steady incomes. And I'm coming from the perspective of a student who has no fixed income and is really just buying a lot of these items from his personal savings. So that's why I do take a lot of pride in my collection, but I do recognize that it's very expensive to add anything more to it. And while I'm on the subject, I want to address an issue that I saw recently on YouTube regarding how to obtain these pieces when you don't have necessarily the financial means to do so. I saw a video a couple days ago that was talking about how to earn enough money to buy something like Third Reich Militaria, which, as all collectors know, is very, very expensive if you get something that's authentic. And I forgot who put up the video, but basically the premise was that you should buy something at a low price. It could be anything from a medal or maybe a uniform, something that you knew was at a lower price than its actual value, and then you would sell it at a later time in order to get something that you actually wanted. So, for example, you would end up buying something that you don't necessarily want, but you know has a lot of value, and then you would sell it a couple years down the road for a profit. That's basically what the video was saying. And in general, that's a good business model, I feel like. Maybe not a business model, but just a means of obtaining something that you want, because it does make sense. You want to make money off of the things you're buying, so you're looking to buy at a low price and sell at a high price. That's nothing wrong with that strategy. But in terms of Militaria, I just don't agree with the implementation of that kind of strategy in this field. And I'll give you some reasons why. Militaria, unlike a lot of other collectibles out there, just how I feel, don't really have a market retail price that collectors can look to, because a lot of these things are, used military gear that was issued to soldiers and then later sold by the family or donated by the family to someone else, and that someone else sold it to another person, and somehow it ended up in your collection. And in that case, it's very, very hard to put a set market price for a piece of Militaria that everyone can look to and say, oh, well, this is how much this piece is worth. As a friend of mine who's a collector once said, a piece of Militaria is only worth what the buyer wants to pay for it. That's basically almost entirely true for all pieces of military gear. So you're not, and I see way too much of this, that people post on the internet like, oh, can you appraise what this piece is worth? Can you tell me how much I can get for this? yes, a lot of experts can give you a ballpark idea, but that doesn't mean you're going to sell it for that price. So if someone tells you're going to sell it for $2,000, don't expect to sell it for $2,000. Don't say, well, I'm only going to accept $2,000 or more for it, because that's not going to work. And that's just my opinion, but you can disagree or agree with it. But I want to get back here for a minute to the that video that I saw, because I just don't agree with the idea of buying something that you don't want just because you think that it's going to make you a profit later on. I understand once again that not all people can afford this hobby and they're looking for different ways to get into it. But the great thing about collecting any sort of object is that you like to collect what you have. And to say that you should get something that you don't want just because you think it'll make you a profit is just not a good idea. Because what happens is you do that on a repeated basis, thinking that you'll make a profit off of each successive thing, to the point where you end up with a whole lot of items that you don't actually want, you can't actually sell, and they're just stuck in your collection, and you don't know what to do with them. I mean, that's not something that I feel like a good Militaria collector should get into, because that's just a trap that you can't get out of. And I hear it a lot because I've attended a few reenacting events where I see this problem. And I'll give you an example. I was doing something in California a couple months ago, and there was a reenactor there. He was with his son, and they were just talking about different kinds of gear. And the guy somehow brought up that there were some neckerchiefs, U.S. World War II neckerchiefs from the Second World War on eBay, and he was planning to buy them. The thing is it was a set of 3 of them, and he added, oh, well, I'll only buy them if they're at the right price. Well, what? Why do you need 3 neckerchiefs? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, if the guy had been a neckerchief collector or he had collected uniforms, it would have been different, because maybe you needed those for displays. But if you're just buying those because they're at the right price, that doesn't make any sense. You're just hoarding, and I hate to use that word because it has a negative connotation, but you're pretty much accumulating all this Militaria stuff just because it's at the right price. And that's not something you should get into. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it's something that you should try to avoid, because that's a very negative kind of mindset that'll end up putting you in a bad situation where you're putting money into things that you don't want just because you think that it's the right price and you're never going to get it again. And this goes for all types of collecting, and certainly I'm a victim of it, which is why I'm making a video about this right now. So yeah, in general, I really don't agree with that mindset of just buying something because it's at the right price. You should buy something, and this is where I'm going to introduce my own opinion on how to correctly collect Militaria. And my saying would be, buy what you want, collect what you want. And it's pretty simple. You should buy what you want because you want it, because you will treasure it. And just to go off my own example, on the bottom left of the collection that I have laid out, you can see a blue M1 looking helmet. That's a French OTAN 51 helmet that's painted in dark blue because it's a police issue. And that's not a very valuable or old helmet. It's from the 1960s. It's not even worth $20. But to me, it has a lot of value because if you look on the inside, there's actually a name. I think it's Richard S. I'm not sure. But just that name meant something to me because I've always wanted a named helmet, because a helmet with a name, just in my opinion, makes it much more powerful and gives it some kind of history that I, as a historian, really appreciate. And yes, I know it's not worth a lot of money, but it's worth a lot to me, and that's what's important. And that's what I feel a lot of collectors uh, overlook sometimes. And I'm not saying that a lot of collectors don't appreciate what they have, but they get so caught up in looking for the right price, looking for the lowest deal, looking for the best bargain, that they forget that this hobby is about collecting what you actually enjoy. So it's not always about looking for the right price. Yes, it's an expensive hobby, but it's not always about looking for the right price. And that's why I also say you should collect what you want. So don't. I mean, I'm just going to go off an example here. I see a lot of people who get into collecting say, say to me, what should I collect? What should I look for? Or go on like online forums and say, oh, well, I want to get Third Reich stuff because it looks like, oh, it's going to appreciate in value and I'll be able to sell it later. Or because Third Reich stuff because everyone has it and I want a piece of it. That's not a good reason for collecting something like that. Don't just collect SS because everyone's collecting SS. Don't just collect airborne or US D-Day relics just because, oh, I saw it in a movie. That's a bad idea. Don't do that, because oftentimes you'll end up collecting a lot of stuff you don't actually want. I'll give you an example. There are a few videos on YouTube about people who collect relic shells. Now, I believe a lot of people actually like collecting relic shells. There's a certain charm to them, a certain battle-worn kind of feeling when you see the holes in the shells and the rust, and you can just see how this soldier went into battle with this helmet. But then there's also people who collect relic helmets just because they can't afford an actual Third Reich M-40 army helmet that they actually want. And that's not a good idea. If you're buying something because you can't afford the more expensive option, so you're just going to go for the cheapest option, that's not good either. Because then you're just buying something you don't actually want just because it's cheaper. And eventually down the road, you're going to say, well, why do I even have this? I don't actually want this. I want something better than this. And you'll just end up, sitting around with it, and you'll lose interest. And that's why I say you should collect what you want. Yes, maybe you can't afford what you want today or tomorrow or even months from now, but you should keep your eye on what you actually want in your collection instead of just buying stuff because it's convenient and cheap. You should buy something or just collect something because you actually enjoy collecting it. And yes, I know that seems pretty obvious, but you would be surprised just how easy it is to get distracted once you get into a hobby. And I want to add on to this by talking to people, or talking about people who say, well, that's a ripoff. You shouldn't be putting money into this or that. You should be more careful about what you buy, etc. People who pretty much go into any kind of collection, go into any kind of show, and just point out what a ripoff everything is. That's and I not to say that yes, there's a lot of fakes and a lot of overpriced items in Militaria. I'm pretty guilty of complaining about it all the time. But if you're a person who just walks around saying, well, this is too expensive, you paid too much for this, I'm not going to even look at this because it's way overpriced, well, you're losing sight again of what collecting is about. Military collecting is not about finding the best price. It's not about looking for the best deal. It's about collecting what you want. And okay, who cares if the M40 Army shell that you actually want is $50 overpriced? If you actually want it and you have the means to buy it, why the heck aren't you buying it? I mean, yes, a lot of people might disagree with what I'm saying, but if you want something, you should get it. Because if it means that much to you that you're actually willing to pay up that extra $50, I don't see what's stopping you. So just ignore what other people are saying about whether this is too much or too little, or I don't know, whatever excuse they make up. Just ignore them. It doesn't make any sense. You should collect what you want because you actually want to collect it. And in my own collection, I feel like I've done that a lot. You can see on the right-hand side, there's another French OTAN helmet, but it's in green this time. That's because this one is an Army issue, and if you were able to see the actual texture on it, you could see the cork finish. And this helmet, in comparison to the M1 helmet, that's the one next to it is actually a U.S. World War II issue, but the French helmet is worthless compared to the World War II one. But to me, it means a lot because I've always kind of admired that period of French history, the period where France was losing its colonial empire. And for example, this helmet would have seen action during the very end of the French-Indochina, the beginning of the Algerian War. And that means a lot to me because, this is a piece of history from that time period. This might have been a helmet that was actually used during that conflict. And to have that in your hands means much more to me than any kind of price figure or monetary loss that might incur from buying it. And that's why, and I'm going to wrap this up because I know that I've been rambling for quite a while, but I'm going to wrap up this video by simply concluding and telling people that don't just get into Militaria collecting and start collecting stuff based on what the so-called experts or your collecting friends tell you should do. Get into Militaria collecting because you genuinely enjoy what you collect. And if you do that, you can't go wrong. Yes, research is important. Yes, going around and touching and picking up stuff and exploring is just irreplaceable in the world of collecting. But before you do all that, you have to just decide for yourself what you want, and you just have to keep your eye on it. And if anyone tells you otherwise, then I'll just flat out say it. I think they're wrong. Because if you're collecting what you want, you're buying what you want, you're paying a price that you personally feel is reasonable, then you're totally in the right. And there's no one who can tell you you're doing something wrong. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I didn't talk so much about the helmets in detail as I would have liked. If you really like this video and you want to hear more about my helmets, feel free to comment, and maybe I'll have the time to do an individual helmet review at a separate date. Until then, this is Tau434, and thank you for watching.